You're listening to Nora and Noah Decode the Day, where markets meet meaning every morning.
So you're joining us at a really significant point, actually, because hot on the heels of that huge search engine ruling we talked about, Google's just been dealt another big blow in court.
Yeah.
This time it's all about their online advertising business.
It really makes you wonder about the bigger picture, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, for anyone just trying to keep up with all this, it's more than just some tech headlines, right?
Right.
These court battles, they could genuinely change how the whole internet works and, the role these giant companies play in our daily lives.
Totally.
Think of this maybe as like a shortcut, getting the inside track on a potentially massive shift in the digital world.
Exactly. So, okay, in this deep dive, we're going to get right into this latest verdict.
Okay.
We'll unpack what the court actually decided, what it means for Google right now, and what the knock-on effects might be for the other big players, Apple, Meta, Amazon.
Yeah, the usual suspects. Yeah. We've gone through the details from the Korea Economic Daily to pull out the really essential stuff for you without getting totally lost in the weeds.
Good plan.
Okay, so let's dive in. The core of it.
Yeah.
What did the court actually rule?
Okay, so this ruling came down from Judge Leonie Brinkema. She's in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia.
Right.
And the really crucial finding is that Google was found guilty of monopolizing, specifically the online advertising server market.
Okay.
That's where websites manage their ads, basically. And also the ad exchange market, where the ad space gets bought and sold.
Monopolizing. That's a strong word.
Yeah.
What exactly did Google do to get that label in these particular markets?
Well, the court found that Google used anti-competitive tactics, basically strategies to, build up and then keep their dominant position. And they did this in these two areas for over a decade.
Wow, over 10 years.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, the court didn't actually agree with the Justice Department on everything. They rejected the claim that Google also monopolized the ad network market. That's kind of the go-between for advertisers and publishers. So Google won that part, sort of.
Huh. Okay, so 2 out of 3 isn't terrible for the DOJ, I guess. But let's break down these markets a bit more. Advertising server and ad exchange. What do those actually mean in simple terms?
Right. So think of the advertising server for Google. That's their product called AI Ad Manager.
Right.
Think of it as the software a website, like a news site or a blog, uses to control where ads show up on their pages, when they show up, that kind of thing.
Got it. The control panel for ads.
Exactly. And then the ad exchange is, it's like a huge, super fast auction house.
Right, where the deals happen.
Yeah, where ad space is bought and sold automatically, like in milliseconds. And what really jumps out here is just how dominant Google is. The article points out this incredible statistic. Something like 90% of online publishers rely on Google for their online ads.
90%. Wow, that's almost everyone.
Yeah.
So the news sites we read, blogs.
Yeah, pretty much. News sites, blogs, content creators, they're nearly all using Google's system.
Okay, so what does that kind of dominance actually mean for those publishers, the ones making the content?
Well, because Google is so central, they can charge these publishers pretty hefty fees just to use their platforms.
Like how much?
We're talking, according to the article, around 20 to 30% of the ad revenue generated.
20 to 30. That seems high.
It is significant. And the Korea Economic Daily mentioned some pretty strong testimony from executives, people from places like News Corp and the Daily Mail.
Oh, yeah. What did they say?
They basically said they felt forced to pay these fees, these high fees, because, where else were they going to go?
Right. No real alternative.
Exactly. Given Google's huge market share, they felt they didn't have much choice. It really puts publishers in a bind.
Yeah, it really paints a picture of a market that lacks choice. So, okay, the ruling's been made. What happens next? What are the potential consequences for Google if this decision actually sticks?
Well, first thing, Google's already said they're going to appeal, so this definitely isn't the final word.
Okay. Standard procedure, I guess.
Pretty much. But if the ruling is upheld, the consequences could be, pretty major.
Like what?
One really big possibility is something called forced divestiture.
Divestiture. Meaning they'd have to sell off parts of their business.
Exactly. They might have to sell off some of their ad tech units. The article specifically mentions something called Google Network as potentially being on the chopping block.
Google Network, is that a big piece of their business?
It's significant, yeah. Reportedly, it brought in about $3.1 billion in revenue last year.
3.1 billion, okay.
Now, that's only about 9% of Alphabet's total revenue, so it's not, the core search business.
But still, not small change.
Definitely not small change. And it's interesting, the article also reminded us about earlier reports where Google apparently considered splitting off part of its Google Ad Manager team.
Oh yeah, that was in response to EU regulations, wasn't it?
That's right. So this area, their ad tech business, it's been under regulatory scrutiny for a while now, both in the US and Europe.
It really feels like these legal challenges are piling up for Google. And like you said, this isn't happening in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
This feels very connected to that other big antitrust case we covered, the one about their search engine.
Exactly. That connection is crucial. You have to remember, Google was already officially labeled a monopoly in the search engine market. That happened back in August last year.
Right, we covered that.
And then remember, in November, the Justice Department took another big step. They actually asked the court to force Google to sell off its Chrome browser.
Sell Chrome, wow.
Yeah, so these cases are absolutely linked. They're building on each other, and they both point to this much broader concern from regulators about Google's overall market power across different areas.
Okay, forcing them to sell Chrome, that would be just massive. How does this advertising ruling, the one we're focused on today, compare in terms of potential impact to that search engine case?
Well, look, both are incredibly serious for Google, no question. But the search engine case, arguably, that represents even higher stakes.
Really? Why is that?
Because the search engine market, as the article points out, is directly tied to something like 75% of Google's total advertising revenue.
75%. Okay, yeah, that's huge.
It's enormous. So while this ad tech ruling is definitely a major setback for them, the fight over their search engine dominance, that could have even more profound financial consequences for the company. It just shows the scale we're talking about here.
This whole situation feels like it could be a real watershed moment, not just for Google, but maybe for the whole tech industry. Are we seeing like a broader trend here? Are other big tech companies facing this kind of intense scrutiny too?
That's a really important question, and the answer seems to be yes. This ruling could absolutely have ripple effects. The Korea Economic Daily piece specifically calls out other major tech companies that are, currently in the antitrust spotlight.
Like who?
Well, there's Meta, of course. Regulators are looking really closely at their acquisitions, Instagram, WhatsApp.
Right, those have always been controversial.
Exactly. Then you've got Amazon facing challenges over its dominance in online retail. And even Apple is being sued over its control of the smartphone market, the whole App Store ecosystem.
So it really is across the board then.
It seems like it. If you feel like there's suddenly a lot more focus on the power these companies wield, you're not imagining it.
So it's not just Google feeling the heat. It sounds like there's maybe a more concerted effort now to really examine the market power of all these major players.
Precisely. There was some analysis mentioned from the Wall Street Journal highlighted in the article. It pointed to what seems like a bipartisan commitment.
Bipartisan, so both sides.
Yeah, within both the Justice Department and the FTC to regulate big tech more actively. It seems like there's this growing feeling kind of across the political spectrum that these companies just need more oversight. The article even used the phrase that Google is facing a significant headwind in Washington, D.C., which suggests this pressure. It's probably not going away anytime soon.
Right. A headwind. Okay. And just to give folks a slightly wider picture, the Korea Economic Daily also touched briefly on a couple of other things going on with Google, didn't it?
Yeah, just for broader context, really, to show everything Google is juggling right now. The article mentioned the integration of their new AI model, VO2, into Gemini, which just highlights, the crazy intense competition happening in AI right now.
Yeah, that space is moving so fast.
Totally. And it also brought up this other kind of separate controversy around Google's corporate tax payments in Korea. Apparently, they paid relatively little compared to local tech giants like Never and Kakao.
Huh. Okay, so that's a different kind of scrutiny.
Exactly. Not directly tied to the antitrust stuff, but it just adds to this picture of Google being under the microscope from lots of different angles.
Okay, so to try and wrap this all up, the key takeaway here seems to be that Google is facing some really serious legal pressure about its dominance in both online advertising and search.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
And this latest ruling, the ad tech one, combined with that ongoing search case, it could genuinely lead to big structural changes inside Google.
Potentially, yes.
And maybe set important precedents for how other tech giants get regulated down the line. It really does feel like a pivotal moment.
Absolutely. And, this brings up a really interesting question for everyone listening to think about.
Yeah.
How might all this, the potential breakup of Google's ad business or maybe similar moves against other big tech firms, how might that actually affect the online experiences we all kind of take for granted?
Good question. Like the websites we visit, the apps we use.
Exactly. How could things change? What sort of new opportunities might pop up? Or, what new challenges might this create in this whole digital world we live in?
Yeah. What would that landscape look like? It's definitely something to mull over. And hey, if you're interested in digging deeper into this, we definitely encourage you to maybe look into those ongoing antitrust cases against the other tech companies too.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area.
It really is. A rapidly changing space that could genuinely reshape the internet as we know it.
That's it for today's Decode. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow, right here on Nora and Noah Decode the Day.